1.2 million Black Americans put on a U.S. military uniform in World War II. They crossed oceans, they stormed beaches, they bled on foreign soil, and when they came home, they were beaten, lynched, denied the benefits they earned by the very country they fought to protect. Some of them came home in uniform, still wearing their medals, and were dragged off buses and attacked. This is not a story about the enemy overseas. This is a story about the enemy at home. And it's one of the most important and most ignored chapters in American military history. Welcome to Untold America, where we dig into the history they glossed over in school. Today we're talking about 1.2 million Black soldiers who fought in World War II, what they endured, what they achieved, and how America repaid them. Let's get into it. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, Black Americans lined up at recruiting offices just like everyone else. They wanted to serve. They wanted to fight. But the U.S. military had other plans. Despite a law that technically banned racial discrimination in the draft, Black soldiers were sent to separate barracks. They ate in separate dining halls. They used separate bathrooms. They even received blood transfusions from separate blood banks, as if the color of your skin changed the color of your blood. The U.S. Army had literally commissioned a report that described Black soldiers as, and I'm quoting directly, careless, shiftless, irresponsible. Commanding officers were told to handle Black soldiers with praise and by ridicule. This was official U.S. government policy, in writing, on paper, and because of these racist beliefs, most Black soldiers were never allowed near the front lines. They were given the jobs nobody else wanted, loading ships, digging ditches, driving supply trucks. But here's the part that should make every American angry. While Black soldiers were being told they weren't good enough to fight, a young Black man in Kansas named James Thompson wrote a letter to a newspaper that changed everything. He asked one simple question: should I sacrifice my life to live half American? That letter launched the WWII campaign. Victory overseas against the Axis. Victory at home against racism. 1.2 million men fighting 2 wars at the same time. Despite every obstacle thrown at them, when Black soldiers finally got their chance to fight, they proved every racist assumption completely wrong. The Tuskegee Airmen. Over 950 Black men trained as fighter pilots at the Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama. They were told they'd fail, that Black men couldn't fly. They flew over 15,000 missions. They never lost a single bomber they were assigned to protect. Not one. Then there was the Red Ball Express, a convoy of supply trucks that kept the entire Allied Army running after D-Day. 75% of those truck drivers were Black soldiers. They drove day and night through enemy territory. No protection, no glory, no headlines. Just Black men making sure white soldiers had bullets and food. And then came the Battle of the Bulge, December 1944. The Germans launched a massive counterattack. The U.S. Army was desperate. For the first and only time in World War II, they desegregated the units. Black and white soldiers fought side by side. You know what happened? The Black soldiers were evaluated as having performed, quote, well. Of course they did. They'd been trying to prove that for 3 years. When most Americans think of D-Day, June 6, 1944, the greatest military operation in history, they picture white soldiers storming the beaches of Normandy. What they don't picture is the 1,700 Black soldiers who were part of that invasion. They were there, on those beaches, under the same fire, facing the same death. And in the weeks and months after D-Day, Black soldiers were arguably more important than anyone. Because winning the war wasn't just about fighting, it was about supply, ammunition, food, fuel. Every tank that rolled through France, every bullet that was fired at a German soldier, was loaded, transported, and delivered largely by Black hands. Military historians say without the Red Ball Express, without these Black truck drivers, the Allied advance would have stopped cold. They didn't win medals for it. They barely got mentioned in the newspapers. But they helped win World War II, and then the war ended, and Black soldiers came home. Some came home still in uniform, medals on their chest. proud of what they had done for their country, and some of them were pulled off buses and beaten. Some were lynched, still in uniform. Because in the American South in 1945, a black man in a military uniform was seen as a threat. But the betrayal didn't stop there. The WWII bill, the most important piece of legislation for returning veterans, gave white soldiers mortgages, college tuition, business loans. It launched an entire generation into the middle class. For black veterans, the benefits were distributed at the local level, which meant southern states could simply refuse. Black veterans were funneled into vocational schools instead of colleges. Banks refused them mortgages. The VA offices turned them away. Research shows that black veterans received only about 40% of the GI Bill benefits that white veterans received. They fought the same war, they bled the same blood, and they came home to half the country. 1.2 million black Americans served in World War II. They fought fascism abroad while fighting racism at home. They drove the trucks, flew the planes, and stormed the beaches. And they came home to a country that still treated them as second-class citizens. Their story is not a footnote. It is the story. And the fact that most Americans don't know it, that's exactly why this channel exists. Drop a comment. What part of this story hit you hardest? Did you know about the Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Ball Express, the GI Bill betrayal? Hit subscribe if you're new. Every week we bring you the history they left out of the textbooks. I'll see you in the next one. Watch next. What really happened at Pearl Harbor, the cover-up.